Well, hello. Just wanted to hop on here and share some information as I've been digging around some, I guess you'd say, old file bins, right, in a digital format here, looking through some of my season folders and figuring out some of the older projects I've been involved in. Most people know I've been really head down on these 5-year franchise files where it's got a player's two best consecutive years within that 5-year slice. Been fairly popular. Who knew? I mean, I only knew that I like doing this stuff, and maybe a handful at best people on the action forums that enjoyed these. Had no idea that others maybe find these entertaining. But what I realize is there's a lot of other things that I've done over the years that I could share if people might find it interesting. So on Beatles chat that we had a couple of days ago on Christmas Eve, I ended up sharing with him my 70s file, a 60s file, and then I told him that I had plans to do other decades, which I do have a lot of the raw data uh, done for. So I just thought I'd share some of this, see what I could make available, and try to find the easiest way to make it available. I know I can send this off to the Action PC Sports community, which would be, great. I could also do like to say, like maybe find a way to make it easier for um, the sharing to happen directly for me. So some of my thoughts are what I could do is maybe pop some links in here to where I've got a MediaFire place set up where I can download, put photos. It's pretty large files I had on photos from my 70s pack and stuff like that. And I can make that available for everyone. So without further ado here, what I've got fired up is the 1960s franchise best file that I did. I think I started it back in about 2011, 2010 or 11. I started this idea of what if I took a decade and get a player's best 3 straight years and average it and then create a decade file. And I did that. And as I can see here, this one originally, um, click on Boston right here, you'll see I've got it set at 34 players. So even though more people may have qualified, I pretty much selected myself the limit of 34. Later, when I did a 70s file and then went back and redid an 80s file, I expanded that to a larger number. I decided, hey, I'll keep it at a max of 40. And that was based on feedback from other people on the action forums they've given me. I do see in my notes for the 50s file, I went back and have started upgrading those roster files to have up to 40. And I've also started crunching the numbers to add 6 extra players on these. But these are really available right now from what I could tell. I mean, um, I don't know how much play testing I've done because a lot of times once we get all the data entry done on this, or I get it done, I'll play it and then look for anomalies. So if you can see here, this is the 60s franchise file. It is set to have an actual schedule in there, which I believe is great because you can replay it. A lot of people will look at my other files, the 5-year slices that have like 80 plus teams on them and say, hey, is there a schedule for this? I never even thought about it because my view was to have that be kind of like the main file that everybody uses. And then when you want to run a project, you can go create your own blank league and drag in whatever teams you want for that project and then set it up. And I know some people maybe will just grab the 50s and 60s teams and do something there or that because it doesn't really lend itself because of the structure to have a decent schedule. I like to set up things and use templates that were actual major league schedules. So this 60s file is using the 1969 schedule in it. You'll see here for the players, we'll click on George Scott here. If you want to know what year George Scott's being used, I've got him set to 67, but that's telling me that the 3 years I used were 66, 67, and 68. I know that because my approach with these files was to, as default, whatever 3 years I used, I'm just going to default and set them to the middle year. So this is saying he put up his numbers in 1967 Fenway. For the team, I believe Like I've got them set to 69. I believe I looked at all the years and all the ballpark data from that decade, and I found the one that was closest to the average ballpark data for that decade versus letting them be assigned to like the one where it was, maybe the most home runs or the farthest away from the average. So um, anybody could always change that though, right? You could go here and assign them to whatever part you wanted and change the year here. The only ones you don't want to mess with are the ones with asterisks below, because that is going to start changing what the game, um, how the game views where the player itself came from. It's very important for all the adjustments being made to park and air and all that, that the game knows where that player's stats were put up. So there is that good information. Let me take a look over here and see if I've got anything else that I wanted to cover on this before I show you. Because what I did before I came on is I took this 60s file. Oh, and you'll see pictures here. Those are because I've got some teams done in my 5-year slices where I dump all my player photos into the main player photo category. So you're seeing some of those default images pop up here, but I don't have a specific photo pack done for this decade file. I do for my 1970s, and I can show that in a moment. But here's the players. So take a look at, we've looked at George Scott. How about Carl Yastrzemski? You can see I've got Yaz in 68, meaning 1967, 68, and 69 were the years that were used for this. And he was set to the middle year. The new bio option here on 2023 Action Baseball is great because if I hit bio, this gives me um, an idea of where these players came from. It also shows an original team that they came from. And not sure why, I remember an error happening where, let's go take a look at Russ Nixon, right? So what this is referring to is its original team. So if you had a draft league, you'd want to see what the original team was, right? Well, if we look at Russ Nixon, let's click on him. It's showing over here LAD, meaning the game thinks that's his original team. There was an error that I was getting when I was creating homebrews back 8+ years ago, and I reached out to Action PC, and they came up with this great tool, and I'm going to run it right now. If you ever start seeing weird things over there, or it's off, you have the option under Tools. Over down here at the bottom right, it says Clear Player Previous Team Abbreviations. I'm going to run that. Edits complete. Okay, edits complete. Now we'll go back to that roster. It was a great tool that Action put in there to be able to get rid of that stuff, right? Now you'll see they're showing all at Boston. So this would be a cool way, like if you wanted to have that previous team in there, you could see it. If I right click to modify Chuck Schilling, it's going to ask me if I want to do that. So if I wanted to have a note here that their original team was something, I could come in here and type in, Philadelphia or whatever I wanted it to be. But I like it because now I don't have that extraneous information on the player cards and everything showing that, yeah, they're at Boston. They're on the Boston team now. But you can see here Gary Geiger, 60 to 62. So he's set to 61 at Fenway Park. And you'll see Action PC doing its stuff if we click on, let's click on Carl Yastrzemski. There's this new banner where Action looks at the current file that you're in, and it will show you the top. I don't know if it's doing the top 50 or whatever, but it's showing here that he's 41st on this 60s file in average, 11th in home runs, 48th in stolen bases. So this is a new feature on Action that kind of highlights where that player stands as far as the league leaders. So what did I do here? Well, before I came on, I ran. You see franchise best. I ran a test over here, one that I had started to see how these teams turned out. And here we go. And here's what I did. I ran it. I set up the league with these rules, standard batter, pitcher average. I'm using DH because I just view this as, hey, you got a lot of teams in this decade. We don't need to see pitchers bat. I'm not a big fan of watching pitchers bat. I also, for variation, allowed catcher fatigue to be on, rain delays, suspensions, and ejections to happen. Um, Set the rosters to be 25 and let the managers manage who gets called up, right? I'm using the real player durabilities, and I only turn it on 1 game injuries. I could have had multi-game, but I thought, well, let's just do 1 game injuries right here. Just wanted to do a quick autoplay and see how things ran. So as you can see here, here's what happened in the autoplay. Atlanta kicked butt. I think San Francisco has the highest decade average, but they were a little bit above 500. And Baltimore, as expected, was really tough with Minnesota coming in right behind it. So this is just a quick autoplay. I like running these when I've created some of the homebrew files because then I'll look for anomalies, right? Maybe look at some of the player cards or see if something really wonky came out. But you can see here, let's take a look at just the NL. And we can see the batting leader is Bill White. Clemente comes in second. So we ended up with 4 batters over 300. Of course, they were facing some tough pitchers, right? You look at some of the pitchers from that era. Koufax was leading the way in ERA here at 2.24. So let's look at his card, see how he did. It's another great feature I love about Action. When you pop the card up, you can see his real line, what would have been expected, and then his replay. So he got 25 starts in. It'd be interesting to see how the manager managed having all those pitchers on that staff, right? Maybe he's pitching every fifth, sixth day, or maybe the manager just decided to use him a little bit differently. But you can see here he ends up with his win-loss record 10-5. Really tough to figure out how you would best manage in a league where you have deep teams like this. But home run leader, Eddie Matthews. And we'll see his real line, 39 home runs he would have hit in those 3-year averages, and he ended up with 50 in the replay. Average was a little lower, but he got a ton more power. Look down in here, he had no multi-home run games, which is interesting. If I look right down here, this is a cool stat, no multi-home run games. But he hit 50. Breaks it down by month, so kind of a cool look. Anyway, just a little look at the 60s file here. I shared that with Beatles, and I thought, man, I'm going to have to pull some of these files out, go through them, explain them to the community, and then make them available. And I think what I may do here is on this post, in my description with the video, is figure out where I can drop my links to these projects and label them so that anybody that comes here to watch this has easy access to download the file from here. I haven't messed around with doing that, but I'm a newbie when it comes to all this stuff, but I think I'm going to have the ability in my description to drop some of those links in there where anybody that's interested can download these. So I have a 1960s file. It has 34 person rosters on it, and there was a plan to upgrade them to 40. I just never got done with it. So these are available, ready to go. It looks like it's playing well. Comes with a schedule so you can have fun with it. Some of the other files I have, let's go into seasons and pull them up. I have let's see, would it be 80s? So if we look, I think the latest would have been 80s best back in 2013. See what we've got here. I know I've got a zip file that might be a little bit newer, but let's take a peek here at what we've got. So when we look at this, you can see I did one for the 80s. I would have used a 26 team schedule, which I did. And it looks like for the 80s, I'm using the 1984 schedule so that you can play a season right out of the box. Looking at how close some of these teams are right here. There's the 80s Royals, George Brett. Brett would be using 80. So Again, let me explain this. How can he be set to 1980 middle year if I'm using 3? And it's because based on feedback, I went ahead and said, anybody, you can qualify for the 80s file, and we can use your stats if you played in 79, 80, or 81, or at the top end of things. Let's take a look at this bio. You got some people, all these people in 89, Bo Jackson, for example, is on this file. We're using 88, 89, and 90. So in theory, and this was based on feedback off those on the forum, we went ahead and decided, hey, let's take the approach of 1979 to 1990 would be the years, because Bo Jackson, 2 of these 3 years being used are still in that decade, and we're assigning him to the middle year, which is still in that decade. So that kind of expanded some of the player availability, and I stuck with that format when I created these files. So take a look at Bo. You know, he's got 28 home runs, batting 258. And makes for an interesting team, right? But let's take a look at how close some of these top 4 teams are here out in the West. You know, we've only got 2 teams for the decade that averaged above 500. That's Kansas City and Oakland, right? Same thing out West in the NL, only 2 teams. So nobody with any of those big numbers we saw with the Orioles in the 60s or anything, very evenly. New York right here, oddly enough, throughout the 80s, leads the way. Didn't really get too much done late into the 80s, right, with some of those teams. Detroit's there, but let's take a look at that New York batter. Let's OPS. Who's up there? Yeah, Mattingly, Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson again, probably using the early years. Yep, he's using 79, 80, and 81. And 81 would have been extrapolated out for full season to make sure that was represented. Dave Winfield here. Let's take a look at what he's got going on. Here he is. He would have been using 82, 83, and 84. Anyway, the 80s file. So these are some of the files that I'm going to make available. If we look at the 80s, if I look at the rosters, let's go take a look at Philly in the 80s. Mike Schmidt was a beast. Yeah, it's got that 1000 OPS right here. Let's take a look at Schmidt's line. You'll see I've got 30 players available on this. So I'm going to look through the files I have, all of these older files, and see if there's one that I had where I expanded. So originally, when this league came out, I think this might have been the first one I did, and I set it to 30. I thought, hey, I'll just do a 30 players will be enough for everybody. And then people are like, hey, you missed this person, and I think it was specifically the pitchers on Atlanta. That Atlanta had a lot of great pitchers and relievers, and if you look at this, they're like, hey, there's so many other pitchers we could have here. So I said, yeah, let me go up it. So I went back and started creating more. And I'm going to have to dig through my files, and I will make whatever I have available on this video, put some links in there for those of you that want to play around with these. But these are very playable, right? They've got schedules, they're ready to run. I've got a 30 roster version here. I believe if I search around through the 80s, there's going to be a one that has possibly I was able to expand them all to 40. Let me pull up my 70s. This was one file, my 1970s file. So I probably have to look in here. Okay, if we go to 70s, you'll see some of the ones where I'm doing testing. I'm looking for the most recent one. 418B. Let's take a peek at this one. I made a file, and I'll look at some of the zips in here available at like Sports Replays at that site. And I think some people have wandered across that and found that this was available there. Made it available many, many years ago, probably about 2013 or 2014. So I have a 70s file. Let's take a look at Detroit. And if you see 1970s, I went and had said, yeah, everybody wants 40-man rosters. I'm going to give them 40-man rosters. If people qualified, right? I'm using the best 3 years. So you can see here in the 1970s, here's that win-loss record. Of course, Cincinnati and Baltimore again being tough. Take a look at that Cincinnati team. I think Beatles did a replay with the Dodgers of the 70s against the Reds of the 70s Christmas Eve day as well. Pretty cool if you haven't been over to Beatles Eternally channel to see that. But here's the pitcher files. See, do it by game started. Batters, like to search by OPS, and you can see there's the 3-year line for Joe Morgan, who we're using 74, 75, 76 right here for him. There's great numbers. George Foster, Bench Perez. So great team throughout the 70s there. One of my favorites in the National League. Yeah, so this one I can make available. So I'm going to make sure I've got the latest zip files, find out what the latest is for these, and again, make them available if anybody's interested. So I have a 70s ready to go. I have a 60s that has 30-man rosters. I'm going to look to see if I ever have the one that has more players added. If not, I'll make that the 30-man one available for you. So I have an 80s, a 70s, and a 60s that are available to share. I also have the numbers crunch. Let me go back and take a look at what I started to do with the 50s. I can pull some of my numbers, my sheet over here. Anybody cares to see? This is my raw data sheet that goes on and on forever. So if we go over here to 50s, you can see I started off here with I'm getting 23 plus 17. I'm getting the 40. So I've gone and added where I don't have lefty righty data here. These are players that I've added to expand to the 40 approach. So these aren't all ready to be built yet, but they're pretty darn close. And I believe I built one team because my goal was to put a 50s decade disc out next. And you can see down here with some of the teams, here's the Reds. These are still just sitting at 30-man rosters, where some of the others I've already crunched the numbers to expand them out right here. So you can see I've still got to get the lefty righty data. If I go over to fielding, let me see fielding for 247. Yeah, I haven't adjusted these yet. I'm gonna have to bring in some of the fielding data as well for the players over here. But anyway, this is kind of the sheets that I work off of. I have many. I have some where I can drop stuff in and give me my averages, but I've worked off of these. So the goal was to have decade files where it's using a player's best three. Now, they can use even partial of the three. So if somebody, played in, 52, 53, and then 54, they only played 5 games for that team, it still counts, right? As long as they were there in some form, even partial for 3 straight years, they qualify. People have asked me, why did you use the 3-year approach? One of the things is I'm not trying to compete with Dave Cook and Action PC Sports, right? So if I was to do things with single year, I mean, that's all of his files. To me, if you buy his season files, you've got access. Any seasons you own, you have access to that to do anything with that player from that year. You can import it, create a custom team. You can do all your own home, I guess, manipulating. I guess it wouldn't be home brewing if you're not creating stuff. But you could draft them all in and create all-star teams based on that single player's year. So to me, the thought's always been, hey, you should buy his seasons. He even has franchise all-stars, a file you can buy. Then you could take those, but they're all based on single year. Then he created his own version of what a player's peak would be. That's the holy grail of files that I think everybody wants to do cool what if projects. So what he did is creates the history of baseball collection. That's another one. I didn't want to copy that as well. So the home brews I'm doing are their own little niche right here, which is, it's stuff that I'm creating, right? I'm not just grabbing an existing player off of a season file that Action has made available and then repurposing and giving them out to anybody, because that would be like, I'm not trying to create some copyright issue here and that. And to face it, the thing that I've known is player single years. So I'm interested when I create on crunching numbers that haven't been crunched before. And when I say crunching numbers, that's usually averaging it. So I really want to do my own. It's different than what Action does with the peak seasons, and they have a different approach based on if a player played a lot more years, they can use a smaller slice. I don't know what slice they use. They also neutralize it, but I'm looking at maybe a project where I take a player's best 3 years from any of the years they played. They don't have to be consecutive, and having my own just the best 3 year slice. Um, that's a thought in my head. We'll see if I ever get to it, right? But the things I'm trying to do here, I'm not trying to compete with files you could already get with Action. I think I own every season from 1900 to current, and a few that I have prior to 1900. But I'm an advocate for when there's sales and everything, go load up on Dave's stuff. And if you're not interested in single season, get his franchise all stars that have, like for the Reds, it'll have all the great players that played for him, and it'll be using one of their best seasons, right? Or go get Dave Cook and Action's baseball history collection, which is wonderful to do projects, right? So the stuff I'm trying to do is different from what you could already purchase from him, and purchase at a reasonable rate, I might say. And they have great sales that go on. So that's kind of a little bit about the ones that interest me. So here we've got those. I will tell you that there's another, let me take a look at another thing that's interesting. I can't remember who all was involved. This was a team effort years ago. Mark Weiss, who runs the King of Diamonds, KOD League, where they play abbreviated like 30, 40, 50 game seasons head to head with crazy themes, right? Really cool themes like best 500 teams, um, teams that best records that didn't win the World Series, etc. There was an idea, a bunch of us spent the time to create a file, which was a franchise best file. And I believe this used a player's best 5 straight years. This was back in 2011 that we worked on it. So we can see here 1901 to 1942. Let me open this file up. And it has the franchises back then. Sure, what might have one displaying weird because I've got, let's make the background white and see what happens. There you go. Let's take a look at some of these teams. So 1901 to 1942. The idea was nobody wanted to include the war years, so we wanted to wait till people got back. So we did a 1901 to 1942 file. Let's take a look at the Yankees. So you'll see, I believe it was the middle year as well. 1921 he's assigned to. So yeah, I have to think back how we assigned him to the team, but I believe this was based on their best 5 consecutive years. Lou Gehrig here. Set to 1932. Can't remember how we chose to assign him what year, but I believe this was the best 5 years at 30 man rosters, and we use this for a project. So this is kind of cool too, right? This is kind of pre-war, 1900 to pre-war, and really interesting file here. We've been doing a lot of this, or I have a lot of home brewing all the way back to since I've owned the game, which is probably 2003 or 4, I believe. So other seasons I've got on here. What else do we have? Let's go and take a look at 1950s that I told you about. That's kind of my next. If I go back and do these decades file, I'm really close to having the 50s done. Let's see what I've got here. I built one team. So I have one team. As soon as I got it done, I built it in here. So this would be the Brooklyn team. Yep, 91 and 63 in the 50s. Got them set to 52 Ebbets Field. Again, probably because 52 was the most, or the closest to the average ballpark factors. Another project I'm working on for anybody that likes to get in the weeds is taking the single year ballpark factors and using Seamhead's ballpark database and crunching. I'm getting all the data on a spreadsheet for the 3 year rolling averages, which are, my opinion, much more realistic than the 1 year park factors, and then going to figure out, once I get all that compiled, can I build that in and have a park data version for the game that I could drop in that uses 3 years. Or maybe I lobby Action PC to allow a toggle switch where you can either go single year ballpark factors or hit a toggle switch and use 3 year ballpark factors. And maybe I could supply that raw data to Dave Cook and Action PC and get that as a feature. But you can see here this 1950s team, pretty loaded up with Jackie Robinson and Campanella and all those great players there. This bio tab is awesome because now we can start seeing where they all come from. So you can see for this 50s decade, what years you've got them from. Some of the later ones, you got Drysdale coming in there, Koufax coming in late. Let's take a look at what he looks like late 50s. He wasn't the dominant person yet. He's some relief appearances along with some starts, right? Pretty high whip for him. He wasn't the one that we come to know and love, right? You can see he's hitting a lot of league leader categories because it's only Dodgers that are in there so far as we look at this. So, little look at what I might be adding to the 50s. So, as you watch this, if you've got any comments, please leave them below. Again, once I figure out how to get my links in the description of this video, I want to make in the header where you have easy access to see these files and you can download them right here from this video to make it easy for you. Give me any feedback on them, but that may be up in the next day or so. I'm going to edit this to put that information back in it. Once I figure out what the most current files are that I can share with everybody here, so that I can make that available so everybody can have fun with it. But yeah, I have just a ton of different files, and you can tell this 5-year files, many of the things that I've been working on. I do some draft league tests and various tests. Like once we get these things done, is looking for the anomalies on any data entry, right? If anything was entered wrong or stands out, it really helps. Let's see what else I got here. Let me see if I can find. So I've got 80s, test 3, testing ratings. Trying to see if I can find an 80s file that has more than 30 teams on it. Or I mean, more than 30 players on it. And I'm still seeing the one with 30, and I think there was a more updated one. But anyway, I'll play around a little bit more with that. But these are some of the projects that I'm working on right now. And it's hard to keep them all in my head. Oh, I got people that have joined me. Oh, I got Arnold and Smelly Wrestling Geek. Give them a hey guys here. Yes, these are the same file. Arnold, I believe, reached out to me. They're on Sports Replay or Replay Field of Dreams. In fact, let me pull that site up. Let's take a look at it. Sportsreplay.net. Let me pull that thing up. If anybody hasn't been in here, a lot of cool stuff here, right? It's just can be a little all over the place. So let's hit on baseball here. Maybe downloads. Action PC Baseball, page 5. So you can see there's tons of information here under here's Action PC Golf. You just kind of have to scroll down through here and look at the header. Action PC Hockey, Action PC Basketball. And again, this is sportsreplays.net and then Action PC Baseball. So here's Zepp's got some stuff. So what Zepp did is Zepp was a big collaborator with me back. He's another one on the site that loved these kind of projects. And he took some of the 3-year stuff that I did and that he did, and then he started blending them all together into different runs, right? Like he picked different eras. I was looking at straight franchise. He's going 56 to 65, kind of the golden years right there and doing it. Again, yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, here we go. So it's showing that my 80s franchise file here, I have my 60s was available here, 70s, and the 1980s. So I'm going to download, let me download my own file here, take a look at it. Anyway, I'll see which ones are more current. So let's go 60s 31814. Oh, I'm going to have them in a different place. Let me do this. I'm going to take, and then I'll just put this in my seasons folder. Drop this zip in there, and then I can find it easy. So let's go to install. It's not seeing it. Let me exit out and start it back up again. So yes, the 60s, 70s, 80s I had made available. So Arnold's asking me if it's the same. Yep, they are probably the same that you've got. But I'm seeing if I've made some edits where I've expanded some of the rosters. Now I'm trying to figure out where I dropped it. Oh, I think I dropped it in. Yep, I'm missing it. So let's see. As I struggle to find my own download here. Let me grab it. See if I can get it over in the right spot. DK Sports, baseball seasons. Let's try this. And I'm looking for '60s. Boy, you think I'd struggle this hard to find my own file. So let's look in seasons folder. Well, let's try it this way. Well, anyway, I'll double check that later. I'm getting sidetracked now in here trying to find that file. But yes, I do have those available at sportsreplay.net, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I'm going to make sure. Zep's also got some good stuff here where he's taken and made some of that. So he's taken imported from my 3 decades, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then he's done his own 1990 to 26 home brews and combined both of our work and made some really cool files available here. So if you don't have any of that, definitely download that. My goal is to dig through this, make my stuff, find stuff that still might be interesting to those out in the community, make it available, and then do I, now that I've built so many teams for this 5-year slice, which I really like, do I go back now and finish my 1950s and then move on and maybe do a 30s and 20s and whatever, because that's, I've still got a bunch of data here that I could do that with. So that's my goal. But yeah, this is a great site here to get stuff. In fact, I might even have some of my old basketball stuff up here. So let's take a look at basketball, if I have any of that. It's been a while since I've done any basketball stuff. See, Zep's got some work here on franchise basketball teams. I've got great college teams I did back in 2013. These are teams that weren't necessarily Final Four teams, but I crunched a lot of decade on that. Here's another file I did back here with basketball, which was 80s and 70s franchise best, where I took that same approach, their best 3 straight years for each franchise for basketball, 70s and 80s. So yeah, I've done a bunch of stuff over the years. It's been a while since I've gone back and looked at any of that or seen if I've made any corrections that I could update some of these sites with more current ones. But I call it digging through my old bin to see what I still have in there and that people might find interesting. Because I had no clue until I started really getting into YouTube in the last year that there would be this many people interested in the same stuff that I am in some of these projects. So I'm going to start paying attention to that. And if you want, leave me some comments if there's any other projects you think I should work on first, right? Like I think the 50s is the closest that I have to another decade being done. So I'm gonna probably maybe see if I can spend some time on that, depending on what else I'm doing. I've also been updating my photo packs. So let me pull up my see all the different stuff I've been working on here. It's easier to file it this way for me. My 5-year franchise stuff, I have so many different versions of it, but this is what I've been working on recently. Some of the photo packs. Yeah, Smelly Wrestling. They say it is tedious. I think that's my, Beals and I were talking about people that are still doing a lot of cards and dice, and I'm pretty much solely into this, but I get my cards and dice fix of looking at charts and doing all the tedious stuff when I build this. I think that's how I get my kicks out of this, my fill of that, so that when I get ready to play, it's like I really enjoy having all the convenience of having it built into a computer game and playing it that way because all of my charts and doing all that, I've satisfied that need in the building process. So, but yeah, I've put some photo packs together for some of these 70s teams that I didn't have before. So I've got them all for, just did some for the Angels. I did the Angels and this 70s White Sox team. So I have so I have the photo packs ready to go for those. And again, I'm trying to make sure I'm keeping a checklist, right? I've still got a lot to go. My goal is to get all of these photo packs done for my 5-year franchise file, which is a lot now. It's probably getting close to 180 teams. It's right at 178 or something. And get all of these specific baseball card style photo packs for them. Then when I'm done, then I can make those available for everybody to use. But I just like them the way they dress up this file. And to me, I won't feel this is completely complete till I have those. The other cool thing I've started looking at, let me pull up some of my file here. I started based on feedback this idea. Where's all my 5-year? Oh, so I've started this. So I'm taking some of my raw data here, and I'm going to do a file that's called the first 5 years for expansion teams. So I'm going to take the same approach to the 5-year slice, but here's like the 62 to 66 Mets. It's 52 and 110 is going to be their during that 5-year run their uh, um, one loss record, right? Here's the 62 to 66 Houston Colts, 45s Astros, right? 67 and 95 is going to be their record. So I'm getting set up my sheets to start crunching the numbers. 61 to 65 Senators that became the Texas Rangers, right? Mickey Vernon's the coach, 62 and 100, 77 to 81 Seattle. Somebody on the forum recognized that these would be really cool to have like that first 5 years for the brand new franchises. So I'm like, for me, that should be on its own file, right? I didn't want to incorporate them into the big 5 year slice I'm doing, but I thought I'm going to crunch the numbers and let that be its own kind of expansion file, which will be cool to do. And as you can see here, these were all the stuff I was doing back for the 50s and so I've got numbers, don't have the splits done yet, but this would be the 1920 franchise teams. I've got a lot of the work already done. Let me look at the fielding data. I think I started filling in. I got some preliminary numbers, got some notes in here I use on for different ratings and all that. But anyway, I've got the ability to go back when I'm bored, I guess, and take on new projects and do some of this stuff, but all fun stuff. And yeah, I agree. The card photos really do look good in the game. I mean, I, nothing wrong. I mean, it's easy to grab the face shots that people have done a lot of work compiling and just kind of mass import them so that you always have a player there. But I just get a kick out of seeing them in the game with the right logos and all that good stuff. And then so I got those done. I'm trying to work my way from the 70s out, kind of. And I spent some time here over Christmas Eve and Christmas when I could break away doing this. So 5 year, there we go. NL, where's my latest file? Okay, this one. So I got all the, because I have different iterations of the Reds team. So it's easy if the logos don't change. So if you look at my Reds, I had photo packs for these Reds with this logo. And I went ahead and kept that same logo for 68 to 72 and 77 to 81. So now I have all the player photos for the Reds for the 68 to 72 team now in there, 72 to 76, and then 77 to 81. I also, since the logo was the same, I had the photos done for Pittsburgh 70 to 74, and I went and added them for Pittsburgh 75 to 79. So now I have those done. Those are fairly easy because I'm not trying to duplicate the players. I'm just looking at building the ones that have the same logo template that I didn't already build for the other ones, and do that. And yeah, for Smelly Wrestling Geek, when you look at the decade files, I'm taking a team's. Um, well, let me explain this. So this is my big file that a lot of people have liked. I know Al Red Sox fan and Retro Sports, Ron Juckett have been using my 5 year franchise file. So what I did is, if you look at this, and I can pull up some of my raw data to kind of show you what I'm doing on this 5 years team list. So here's all the teams I've done. And I've got notes over here that kind of help me, whether I've got photos and that. I've taken their bet. I've taken a certain 5 year slice. The goal was like, if you can see here, some of the no brainers, right? Here's 69 to 73 Orioles. I took that slice. I took 79 to 83 because when I did the franchise, I'm like, yeah, you've got players that would have never seen each other, if that makes sense, right? You got people coming in 70 and 79. But if you take a 5 year slice, that's kind of cool, is what I thought, is because that team had a run. A lot of these players are more familiar. Um, oh, Smelly Wrestling Geek. Let me show you. And hockey's my weakest sport, by the way. I'll show you a little bit here what I've done with hockey because it's brand new and it's right up the same alley. I've just taken the 5 year slice I wanted, and then I'll come over here and start crunching numbers for it. So let's take the Phillies. Here's my Phillies file. See, the first team I did for the Phillies up here would be 76 to 80. So I come down here, I just figure out who I'm going to make their manager. It's usually the person that managed the most games during that 5 year run for them. I average out what their record would be. That's just for reference info, and then I start cranking their numbers out, right? And I'm putting down. You'll see right here. I've got Steve Carlton 80s highlighted because I'm going to use the best 2 straight years for a player during the 5-year run, and this would be his line. And then I'm picking one of these years to assign him to because the game has to. You have to assign to 1 year, right? So where you see 80 highlighted, that lets me know that I'm going to assign him to 1980. And typically 99% of the time it's because he had more innings pitched. So if a pitcher, I'll pick which one of the 2 years to assign him to. They had the most innings pitched, batters the most at bats. Fielding data, and then you'll see over here for my fielding data, I've got a whole nother sheet I use where I plunk in all the numbers from my different sources and the ratings I use to tell me what rating should go in here. And then I ultimately come up with the rating I'm going to give them for what action needs as far as the rating. Their pass ball, arms, DP, catcher arm, outfield arm. So this is kind of the final sheet I build off of, but I have some other working documents for each of these players where I use typically 5 and in some cases 6 different sources to figure out the ratings. I'm pretty particular about that, even though the ratings, some say, well, what's the difference between a 6 and a 7? Well, I don't know. But there's a difference. So when you play a draft league, the game's going to look at the range factors to help determine how to bump up or reduce the player at the plate's batting average. So some people may not know this, but if you play an action season that was existing, the ratings are really a non-factor because it knows that everybody came from that year. They're already baked in, right? But then when you run a season like this that has players coming from everywhere, let's pick up Cincinnati in the early years here. Yeah, if you've got Vada Pinson in center field, and you've got somebody else there, it's going to look at this because when I built the teams, you go up to modify team. Right? It knows that the team is going to be set to this year and that you've got players coming from different eras. So it's going to utilize the range factors. And Smelly Wrestling Geeks thinking about doing this for Action PC Hockey. So even though this, I'm talking about baseball here, let's go pull up hockey. Let me show you what I got. I got to figure out where hockey's. Oh, here's hockey. Here it is. So I've got these files for football, just like I do baseball, the 5-year players' best 2 consecutive years during that 5-year team slice. And I love this approach. This is the one that I settled on that I just love. Here is 2022, 2003 hockey. Let me go over to franchise best 219, 221. Let's see, the most recent. Here's what I've done. I started it for hockey, and I have. Oh, I messed up something here. Let me see. There we go. I started with hockey, and I only have 5 franchises done. So I've got Montreal, Boston, Philly, New York, and the Blackhawks. And I just did this, I think it was about a year ago. I started working on this. I said, hey, I've never done anything like this with hockey. Let me play around and get some of that done. So one thing I did is as I built each team, I stopped and made sure I did the photo packs because I thought sometimes, like I have done with the 5-year file, it gets way out ahead of me. I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody liked these teams and I'm cranking out teams. Now I've got to figure out when do I have time to go back and get all these photos done? And then for the older years with baseball, I got into colorizing photos and trying to do stuff. So it's like a labor of love, but it's just really tough. It can get away from you. So with this, I said, okay, let me make sure as soon as I get a team done, I go over and get all their photos compiled. I make their card templates and I create cards for them. So if we look at the roster here, at Canadian team, And you can see here I have photos for him. And what's nice is the template I used, I decided to put it down low. So I've got like the little logo down here. I followed the same format I've done with that. And now we've got multiple options for the players too. Um, and where's Mr. LaFleur, who's no longer with us right here. So I've got his photo in here. More of a, what you call like a sports card format. The cool thing is if I go over here to player photos under team, cool thing is when I cycle through here, you can see like Don Ari right here. I've got, he's right here with Canadians, but I've also got a B there because he's also on the Bruins, so on Boston. So you can see I've tried to give at least 2, 3, maybe 4, depending on the player options. So if you don't like this picture, you can click on a second one. If I want to use that one, I'll use that one. Here's Ken Dryden. I got 3 or 4 different pictures for Dryden to use. So this is the same kind of, that's why it takes me time to do all these projects, right? For them to ever be done is to keep coming back with ideas for all the window dressing. But this was the first step. I have not touched this hockey since whatever the dates were on that back in February because I was busy doing other projects. But you can see here's, I've got the pictures in there for them. We can go look at what team you want. Here's Boston. And I've done nothing to set up the teams, right? Like any of the lines, or maybe the computers automatically set up some of the depth charts for them to play. But I've done the window dressing, right? I'm trying to get the when I go in here to modify a team, make sure that I've got a photo for the coach, we've got uniform showing, and that we've got player photo options for them. So here's Bobby Orr. And again, these stats are going to be based off of I've probably the most minutes he played, right? So he's set to 70, 71, but it's his line is based off of his stats are based off of his best 2 straight years during that 5-year run averaged. And if we go to team here for player photos, you can see, get down to Bobby Orr. I've got to have more than one for him. Yeah, I got a few pictures for Bobby Orr here, right? So anyway, got that for that. The next thing I have is basketball, and I don't know if Arnold may have the basketball. I know D. Scott Howard has done basketball, but this is my 5-year franchise file for basketball, and I'm pretty much, yes, I take a player's best 2 years and average that to get the line, and it's the best 2 straight years they had during the 5-year franchise slice. That's exactly what I do. So if we look at these same kind of approach here I did for basketball, I don't have these set up in any specific era order here, but take a look at Boston here, 81, 85. Pretty good time frame. And this, when I say 81 to 85, it's the beginning of the year. So it starts, that 85 would include the 85, 86 Celtics. Action uses the year the season started, not when it ended, to denote. So this would be 81, 82 to 85, 86. And we see I've got photo packs for these as well. NBA, I've got almost all of my photo packs done. So it's probably time to make those available. I'm pretty close. I've done a lot of these. It's easier to do, there's less players. So if I go in here to the team, player photos, yeah, great. Glad to hear that, Arnold. Like if I look at Danny Ainge here, you can see I got Ainge, but look, I've got, and this just matters to me, so hopefully other people care too, right? Then I've got Ainge with a P, meaning I've got Ainge with Phoenix. So, now if I go through here when he's on Phoenix and he's defaulting to a Celtic picture, I can easily have options for him. But I got 5 options for Danny Ainge, so if I want that picture, I can change it. Same thing, Archibald's got some different options. Who else we got here? Larry Bird. I've got some different picture options for Larry Bird, about 7. So, yeah, this is fun file too. But for most of them, I've got photos. I even think for the newer teams, maybe I've got I don't have photos yet for the this 14 to 18 Golden State Warrior team. So some of the newer ones I don't, but I'd say probably 80% of these teams I have photo packs for. Here's the Sonics. Um, here's the Nets team, ABA Nets team. You can see if you go to modify the teams, right? You can know it knows this team was an ABA team, it's a draft team, right? And it's a men's, not a women's, right? Because you can do a lot um, denoting what type of league you're running here. But on this file, a lot of people said, gosh, I want some ABA teams too. So I chose to include them. Here's Indiana, which was an ABA team. I've got a Kentucky 71 to 75 team. Um, on here. Oops, I'm clicking on logos. I hit my player photo here. So even I've got some good picture file here, even for Kentucky, even some of the harder ones to find, right? Dan Issel with Kentucky. Then I've also got Dan Issel without a K next to him so that I can pick him for Denver because I've got a Denver Nugget team in here that team kind of traverses ABA into NBA with their years because Denver is I'm looking in alphabetical order like I know where these are, but I've got them all over the place because I didn't categorize these into eras. I just kind of started building them and throwing them on the disk. This kind of really I hadn't thought to do a ton of sharing with these, but man, I can't find the other Denver team. Who the heck are they? No, they got to be here. Ah, right here. 74 to 78. So part of these years with ABA, part with the NBA, but fun team with David Thompson on it. So yeah, a little bit about that. And then while we're talking about the files, I also have, as Beatles calls it, F-ball, but football. Got football. And I have a 5-year franchise for football that I need to make available. And that's my goal here. I'll probably do it with this post, just come in with a description right below this video I'm putting up now and start adding links to all these so people can watch the video, come here and easily get these. Just probably take me today and maybe tomorrow to kind of dig through which are the most current files. But here's one I've started. See, I've got some blank teams that I've already created ready to fill in. Um, but here's what I've got. This doesn't really mean anything. Sometimes it started out trying to break them down by Central Midwest, but now I'm just adding teams here, right? I had to have a Billy Sims team, so I went ahead and added. I got 91 to 95 Detroit and 69 to 73, but I wanted to have a Billy Sims team, so I did same approach. It's a 5-year slice for a team, and then taking a player's best 2 consecutive years during that 5-year slice to come up with the stats and ratings. But here's the so I got a Billy Sims team in there. See, quarterback play was not great. You got some options there with Danielson, Hipple, and Comlo, but that's just what it was, right? Some of the offensive line ratings and Doug English, an All Pro on that one. But yeah, and you can see I'm trying to dress it out here. Player photos are lengthy for this because there's so many players. You know, there's 50 some players on a team, and I've got a lot of the players raw player photos compiled, but creating the templates, it's a little bit different for the. I know I have Pittsburgh done, so I have player photos, and you'll notice it's a different format with football. So when I go to player, where's my roster tools? Here we go, player photos. It has a different layout. It's more square for football than it is for the other games. So I use a different kind of format. I think it'll show right here a little bit more squeezed or condensed, but when you have it spread out right here, you can see, and in the game, it's a little bit more square than the normal vertical approach here. But let's pick like poor Franco's gone. Let's take a look at Franco Harris here. So I got Franco Harris, and again, you know, I got several photo options for Franco here. About 7 different photo options in here. But anyway, kind of dresses the game up nice. I know I've got probably about 6 or 7 teams completely done. I don't think I've got Oakland from that time frame, all the player photos built for that. Um, you can kind of take a look at the ratings here, some of the teams I've built. I've just started building some of the newer teams. So I just built Kurt Warner and that Ram team, Manning's teams in there. But anyway, just a little bit. So I'm going to look at what I can make available, even for people that are into other sports besides basketball. But yeah, I just started the hockey one and plan on doing more. But I can't stop doing what I'm doing now. We got tape saturated here. Hey, great to hear that. I'm glad the people like the unboxing. I had no intention of let me go heat my coffee here while I'm talking to everybody. I had no intention of doing a 3 hour plus unboxing. So I apologize if somebody wants to go there and expeditiously, like in 20 minutes, learn the game. I I just kind of freeformed it and said, hey, I've got to get through all of these features, and I had a checklist, and it just ended up being like 3 hours. Because what I'm finding is, as you start getting here and talking about the game and doing different things, time flies. But tried to highlight some of the main things that have changed. And, I think some years, some people will be like, well, do I really need the update? And I've been there where you're like, I don't know. In fact, I haven't even updated since I haven't even been playing the basketball game in a while. I haven't even updated to 2022 basketball yet. I still have 2021. Um, and we'll often wonder, hey, is it worth it? But man, this year is wonderful because of the matchup analysis, I think. Just really cool. So, anyway, got tons of projects going on. I have tons of these sheets for every sports where you can see. I think one of the teams I'm working on adding on my 5-year file is the Giants. Let me go over here and see. I'm trying to think of some teams that I haven't built yet because I've got a ton of them here. And I just started this one. I need to adjust batters for years. I've got some stuff in here I'm coding, but it's 1916 to 20 Giant team. Just another iteration. I don't have them on the file yet. That's one that I've started doing some work on so far. And then again, I got to thinking, hey, people were asking for that first 5 years of a franchise. Let me start crunching some numbers on that. That might be pretty cool to do. So yeah, let me fire up. Any questions anybody has? I'm amazed. I'm just feel lucky I got people that were joining me on this because I go live, but then when I go live, sometimes I'm amazed when people actually show up. So I'm not used to having live people here that might have questions. I need to pay attention to the chat a little bit more. So, yep, and the customized player cards. Oh, let me highlight some of these player cards. I'm using, some people have asked about that. I am using, now I'm searching for it like I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, here we go. I'm going to go to edit this. I am using Snagit. I've been using Snagit since probably 2010. And you can see here some of what I'm working on here for my files. I'll have, I just completed, this is my 77 to 81 Reds. And these will have, since it has the same, if we click on a player, the same logo, I'm using the same logo for 68, 72, 72 to 76, and 77 to 81. So I'm really just adding the players that don't already have a photo with this kind of version on them. Gets a little trickier because 61, I've got the Reds here in 61 to 65, but you'll notice I did a different template because they had a different uniform and logo um, theme on that. So those are done. But yeah, this is the program I use. A lot of what I'll do is once I get a template created, I'll have a logo left, and then I'll just come in here right here and hit text, and then I'm coming in here and I'm just adding text. I'm going to type, their name, which takes a little bit of time. And then once I do that, I'm going to add another box below it for their position. And I'm going to have if I want the logo on the left or I want the logo on the right. And that's kind of what I've done for baseball. Because sometimes with the players, the logo on the right, like here's a good example. If I put the logo on the left, it's going to cover his face. So sometimes I have a logo right option. What I do like that I did with the hockey players is, and I'm too far deep in this to change it, is I started putting the logo right here. I put the logo down on the bottom right. So if we look at, let's see what else I got to look at. Player photos. Boom. Hockey. So under team logos for hockey, you'll see, oh wait, I'm in the wrong folder. Action PC photos, hockey player photos, right? So let's go to like Blackhawks logos. So I've created a logo card. So I've got a logo I'm going to use, and I create a small one that I use to put on the card. And what I did is decided, hey, I'm just going to put the logo down here. And that way I won't have to make a decision. Do I put it left? Do I put it right? I'll just use this kind of template and I only have to create one card. Because sometimes it gets to be a little bit tedious moving that around left or right up there. But for the baseball cards, yeah, so these are some of the teams I've been working on lately. For the old teams, it's tough. I'm doing a lot of research, and here's the old Pirate team. I'm starting to grab a bunch of pictures that I can use, and then I'll build a template later for that. And then you can get into the, I showed it on one video where you start running colorizers or actually manually coloring and trying to make the pictures look nice. And then you're like, oh my gosh, how much time am I going to spend on this? I could have been building a homebrew file, or I could have been playing. So this is the battle I have all the time. Where do I spend my time? But my goal is, yeah, for this 5-year file that's just been a blast for me, you can see here, I have um, a folder for each of those 5-year slices so that I can go in there and grab the manager I want. I haven't done that one for this one yet. Here's the Cubs. So I've got the manager I'm using, and then I can start building out some of these I haven't even got. Let's see, 34 to 38 Cubs. Yeah, I haven't even started getting pictures yet for these teams. 54 to 58 Yankees. Haven't done anything there. Here you go. 55 to 59 White Sox. I have all the photos here that I want to use. I just need to go and create the template and then go in and start, editing and dropping the template on the player. So I have all the raw photos that I'm going to use for the game, but still have to go do that. 1970s. So updated photos. Arnold, I think I sent him my photo pack. You'll notice that I made a zip folder that has all these. So for the 70s file, I went ahead and did, oh, well, I'm on here right now. How about I talk about how do I create these? Let me show you how I create these templates. Okay. Let me do it while I'm here. I think Random Human has asked me for this before. But here's some of the templates I first started doing, and I got them all done for my 70s file. And then I thought, right? So stupid me. I'm like, hey, these are cool, right? So here's Al Collins. Then I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to add the logo? And then I'm like, so now my whole approach with the 5-year file is to add the logos to them. But I got a whole file done for my 70s that used just the card template. And I'm going to make those available here as well. Now, the thing about them is when you download them, each one of these has a subfolder. So I just basically drug them all together. So it's a little tedious if you're going to add them to your folders. You would have to click on every one of these. Let me open up these. You'd have to click on like the Cubs and then go to organized, select all, copy, and then go paste it into your player photo in the game. I don't have like an easy install, and I didn't catch that was the approach, right? Because I was just trying to categorize it. So if anybody wanted to come in here, they could see that, hey, if you want these pictures, you could see all the team pictures that are under here. Here's like for the 70s White Sox. And you'll notice I even did something different for the White Sox. Is if I used a picture for them when they had a little bit later in the 70s when they had the darker uniforms, then I went with a darker outline. So just trying to keep it visually pleasing to me at least. Oh, here I am clicking on the wrong buttons. So let's say I'm going to go do a folder. Here's where I first got these. Craveheart made these available to the community. Let me click on this. And they were these photo packs. 62, 68, 69, 71, 73. So he made all of these available. It's the first time I ever saw him. So let's click on 71. This is, if you were going to replay the 71 season, he put together a photo pack that used this baseball card style template. So for example, let's click on one of these. He used this format and I thought, this is great. So I basically took that same format he used and then started doing my own just like it. So click on the other one he has here. He used these also for 68 or 1968. He uses that year's baseball card, okay, template. So there's this template as well. And then he did 62 using that template, right? It's this template. But I'm looking at all the little intricacies and I'm like, which is the easiest for me to repeat? And what I found was for 1971 and 73, he chose, now 73, he's got some different ones. If you'll notice, I guess 73, he did use the 73s and maybe I drug in and combined the two. You'll notice he's got the 73 card format here. I have no idea why he just chose for 1971 to not use the 71 template. So I like these. So here's what you basically do. With Snagit, I can take this Dennehy, right? And let me go, I'm going to save this as, let me come up with I'm saving it as a snag file, right? So for the game, I save everything in JPEGs to use in the game, but when I'm manipulating it, I'm going to use snag, the snag thing, and let me save it in just my picture file. Boom. So I saved it, right? So here's what you could do. Let's say I'm going to make stuff for the Detroit Tigers here. I would go up. I can make this a little, I'm still learning this new. I can make this a lot bigger here. This is what I did. I just went in here and you can select, got all these image tools that you can select right here. And I went in here and I took this. Oops, I got it on 0. Let's go to this one. Okay, I went on this. And let's say I want to make it transparent. I take that and then I just right click cut. And when I cut it, it has it as a white background, but when I go to image, canvas color, I can change that white to transparent. Boom, it's transparent. Now, once it's transparent, I can overlay that. Now that's great if I want to use Bill Dennehy, but I don't want to use Bill Dennehy, right? So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to pick up a tool again and I'm going to say, okay, let's blank that out. So let me grab a pen. Color, here's where it's cool. I can grab the color, the little ink blot, and I select the color here, which is that blue, and then I'm going to go color all of this, cover it up. But then I'm like, I want it to be wider. Let me make it wider. Okay, it's wider. Now I've basically, just by taking that card image I saw, and you can do this with any, go pull up a baseball card format you like and do the same thing here and snag it. Now I've got a basic card for the Detroit Tigers with no name on it. Okay, so now I can go to my file, save as Bill Dennehy. I could call this Let's do this. My Tiger template. And this is how I'll do it. Now I got a Tiger template, right? Now I want to add something to it. So I'm going to go here, open up, and I have my logos saved. Go to where my Tigers logos are. Tiger logo cards. You can see I have all of these, right? And I have this one that's called 1970s and then small. My regular logos that I get from like Baseball Reference are 325 by 325. What I do is I go over to and I save a 75 by 75 file. So I would go to this one and I would say, ooh, this is too big for what I want to use. And I already know this size. I'll say go to image, resize image, and I want to change that to 75 by 75. Apply it. Cool. Now I can hit save. Okay. And I can save it as something else or whatever. And I've already done that. So now I can right click on that, copy it. And now I can go over here and open up my template and then hit paste. And now I can move it around. So if I want to make it bigger to work with, I'll just make it bigger. And I usually go up here and I put it right there. Boom, there it is. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And I like to put a box around it. So I'll come back over here and I will click my pen. I will take the width down to 1 line. I'll just make it a round point, and then I'm going to take my color and I'm going to pick the same color as the outline. And now I flatten, right? So I can flatten this so that I can write on it. And here I go. And there's my single line. And I usually do a double line. Now this can be a little tedious or tricky, but let me pull it in here. Okay, so I'm zooming in and then I'm trying to drag it, not make a, I got to undo. I made a mistake, right? So every once in a while, straight line, then I lift my finger off the mouse button in case I need to go back and hit undo. But see, I can't keep it in the lines, like coloring in between the lines as a kid. So I'll come in here. There's probably easier way. I am by no means a wizard when it comes to any of this stuff, right? I'm just learning how to use all these tools. So this is what I do. And I'll do a left and right version of this, right? Oops, see, I went outside the box again. Oops, keep making a mistake. Probably killing somebody that knows actually how to do things. I could probably snap a line really quick from point A to point B, but hey, I like to use this and how I know to do it. So now I've just created a line. So now I can go back, zoom back out to my 100% size. And now I've got a template. So let's save as Tiger, calling this the Tiger template. Now, let's say I want to go do some work on some pictures, right? So I'll just resize this down here. I keep this locked. You can unlock it and create your own sizes, or it'll keep your ratio if this is locked. I keep it locked and I do all mine with 240. So when I hit 240, it changes it to 240 by 366. I hit apply, I right click and copy it, open it up, and then I start looking for pictures. So let's say I go to, let's go to someplace I have a bunch of pictures. So I go to 60s Detroit Tigers, take a look at Don Wirt. Here's Don Wirt, right? And then I could mess around maybe with the size here. Maybe I want to increase that picture up, maybe make it 400. And then I can just paste. And now I paste this on here. And because it's transparent, I can do whatever I want. And if I want it to be bigger, let me take this back, undo it. Let's make Don Wirt bigger. Let's make him 500 by 455. Now when I paste it, I can like, oh, okay, now I've got something for Don Wirt. Boom. Now what I didn't do is I didn't add the names. So let me show you how to add the names. So now I go back into my template. Okay. Before I start building, I keep the template blank and then I'd come in here. I'd go to the text. I use this Segoy UI black. It's just what I do. The font size is, I use 14, but you can play with this and figure out what you want. I drag here Then I would go Don Wirt. I use 14 for the player's name, and this is through trial and error. Then I come down here and I'm going to add me another box for text here. I can move this box around. I change this to 11. I go in that box and I hit third base. And then I just try to center these boxes on the so the spacing looks decent to me. So when I get done, I just make sure that I always leave that blank template that I have no name on it, so that when I do Don Wirt's cards, now I've got his name. I'm going to shrink him down to 240 because that's what I'm using. Apply. It'll say flatten all. Yes, copy Don Wirt. Now I can go back over to those pictures. I got Don Wirt there. I can paste on there and then bam. I hit flatten and then I can just start dragging these in. It lets me trim it and I can drag it right in. Right? I can hide the picture behind it. There you go. I got a Don Wirt baseball card. Frank Catalanotto. Okay, let's do this. So I can undo all that. Let me redo it. So let's do this. Frank Catalanotto. And here's, okay, he's barely going to fit. He'll fit in there. We can make him be whatever we want. I'm just going to, I think he's second baseman. I'm just going to put utility. You can put whatever you want in here, right? Now, if you want to do baseball card templates and not put a position, you're even better off, right? You can just put the name. I'm just happen to be putting that, right? So I would go to my folder, where I have all my pictures, right? And let me just create one. And I'm going to call it test photos. And then I'm just going to pull up usually several sites. I will use a lot of eBay, whatever your search engine is. Right. So let's just type in Frank Catalanotto. I've misspelled it. Frank Catalanotto. Bam. Here he is. Hit images. So we got Frank Catalanotto. Which ones do I want? Right? Oh, here's a good one. Oh, I like this one. Right click, save image as. Right? Now I can see there's going to be an issue because it's a web image, right? It's going to cause me problems. There's a couple ways around it. I could go up here and use this feature to take a screenshot on it and save it in a JPEG, or I could just look for JPEGs. So let's find one because the game needs it to be, it's pretty great with JPEG. So what do we got? Ah, is this Frank Catalanotto? Sure is. So right click, save image. I use this. Go to my test photos. Frank Catalanotto. I use first name underscore last name, so he's saved. Then if I wanted more of him, maybe here's another one with him as Texas, right? So I'm going to say Frank Catalanotto, and then I'll just add a two, saved. And that's all I do. I go out and manually search for him, grab him that way. So now I've got him here, and I'll get him to the, you could use this. There's no reason that says you can't use this size photo. For whatever reason, I just chose to go 240, and I've just stuck with that. So I just changed it all to 240. Hit copy, and now I go to where I saved Frank Catalanotto. He's going to be under test photos, and here we go. Well, there's Frank Catalanato, utility player. And then I can just drag the borders in and keep my nice baseball card border, right? And then I go up here and I go save, and bam, there he is. Now let's open up the second one. Before I can kind of get these because I know closer to my format, right? I know this is going to be bigger than my card. My card's 240, so maybe I bring this down to 240. And I hit paste, and not the best photo of him with his head kind of cut off like that, but let me undo this. I'll leave him a little bit bigger. So maybe I'll make it, I want to take it down to a 300 size. So it takes a little bit of resizing to play with these. Paste my card on there, and then there. Drag my borders in. File, save. And now when I go back to that folder, I got 2 baseball cards. Playing for the Tigers in a utility fail, but yeah, this is kind of a nice little test. And then there they are. So some of the stuff I do, you don't have to do, right? Like you could keep the original image that you snip, but you could come out here if you wanted a template. Let's try that. Let's say there's another baseball card template that you want. I'm sure you could buy them or whatever out there, but let's do this. They use them in little leagues, right? When the kids take their picture. So let's look at, here's some you could, baseball, printable card thing, but you could grab this Topps card here. The only thing is for me to cut out the edges that are white that are round and all that, that's a little more tedious work to get that to be transparent, right? But you could do it. I just loved all the square stuff that was on the version that I saw, right? I mean, you could take any template you want or dream one up and create it. And the main thing is that you're going in and making that white area, you're cutting it out to be transparent so you can overlay it. I just didn't want to bother trying to cut out with all these curves and get that. That was too tedious. So I just really liked this. So you could go 61 Topps baseball card, right? Look at images. You could get a high quality, here's a mantle, right? But you could find one that has here's a nice Ron Santo. Now it's got stuff in the way, right? It's much easier to me if you find something you don't have to cut around. You could always go back and add like the trophies and on there, but you could take this Ted Williams one right here, and you could save this image, call it Ted, and now we go back in here, and I'm going to go open that. Let's say I can pick up Ted Williams, right? Now, if I want to create a template to lay this over, I would probably pull this in because that was taken on something, right? Give myself a nice, consistent border, okay? But then I would just come over to here, and I've got this selected, so it's so much easier to grab it like this. Select that area, and then just hit cut. And then I go over to my image and look at the canvas color, and I'm changing the canvas color to be transparent. Now I've got a Ted Williams card that I could go and let me shrink that down a little bit, go to 240, right? And let's say I copy that. Now I go over to my Don Wirt that I was messing with, or one of these. I could even go here. Let me come over here to Frank Catalanato. Let me find a better picture. Let's do this. Let's do Ted Williams. See, there's a picture I like for Ted Williams, and well, this is the one I want right here, right? Save it. It's giving me that web. I always avoid the web formats. Just much easier to deal with JPEGs. Go Ted Williams 3. Save it there. Now, let me get back into my thing. I'm going to open this up. Go to test photos. There's Ted Williams 3. Boom. I could paste my, boom. I've just made my own Ted Williams card. So you saw I just took an existing baseball card stop. Now it's not perfectly square, right? But you could tweak that image and make it a little bit better. But let's zoom in on it. You'll notice it still looks pretty good. But I just cut out and made transparent that middle part. Cool, random human. Throw me a tip in there. Drop me a tip in here if there's a way that I can cycle out those web photos and all that. Now, if I like a web photo, what I do is I just go ahead and snag it, because that's one thing I like about the Snagit program. I have this little thing up here. So if there's something I get on there that's why am I pulling up the wrong one all the dang time? So if I'm going here and let's say we want Ted Williams, and it's a file that won't let me, that isn't the right format or whatever, I always have the option, if I pull this thing up, like that said that was a web one, I can go up here. Snagit comes with this little record thing, and I can always go ahead and just highlight what I want to grab. I'm going to grab that, and then I'm going to take a picture of it. And then this will allow me then to go to save as, and I can then change that to my JPEG. So I can go about it that way. Cool. You can always just use snip tool and say, yeah, that's exactly what I was doing right here. And Snagit kind of has its own snag tool, so I really like that. But yeah, so glad you guys came in. I was meaning to put together something that would kind of help explain how I do photos, so hope this helps. If you've got an editor, I mean, there's more out there. I just kind of know how to use Snagit, and I upgraded to the current version. I've been using one from 2012, so I'm still kind of getting used to the layout of it, but it's powerful for what I need it to do. If I want to go add text box on there, but if they're square, it's really easy. Now, you could take a 72 tops template that we saw or that we looked up. It's just that when you went to cut it, you're going to have to spend more time manually dragging and cut out the transparency part. So it's going to be a little bit more tedious, sometimes pixel by pixel, trying to get that card to be a template that you can overlay if there's curves and everything. But if that's the look you're going for, by all means, put the time into your template, then you could do it. And then it's just a matter of hunting down the pictures you want and, file sizes and all that good stuff. But I do enjoy Snagit. It's been really good. I think Mark Weiss years ago turned me on. That's what he used. He used to make a lot of baseball card style templates for specific years and that. And it's been pretty fun. But yeah, I'm trying to crank out more and more of these. I do have some teams like the Braves. I don't think I have. So there's the Braves. I need these late 50s Braves done. I've got a lot of I've got some players done. Look at this. I've already cranked out some. So here's what Hank Aaron, I've already done his. That's what the template style looks like with the Braves. But I have a lot of the raw players here. And then there's some others where I'm trying to get them color if I can, that I'll need to run through a colorizer, or, if I want to use that picture. I just like having options. And so I try to get a couple at least, if not a few. Some of the better players like Aaron, I probably got, see how many photos I got for him. Easier to find the better known players. So I've got what? Oh yeah, I got 8. You don't need to have that many, right? If you had 1 or 2, that's good. But that's what takes me a little bit longer in putting together some of these, is I've got a lot of different options for some of the players. Right. discard all of those changes. So cool, man. It's been great spending some time here with everybody going through it. But this is a little insight into a lot of the projects that I have going on. Um, Trying to get some of the picture stuff caught up. I haven't created any new teams in the last week or so. But I thought, yeah, if I start digging out some of these old files, people might find those enjoyable, right? Let me see my 70s. This might be, I think Arnold, this is the one Arnold was talking for. He's got this 70s file. This is a fun file to have. See Boston in the 70s. It got 40-man rosters formed based on their best 3 straight years for that franchise during the decade. So a little bit different approach on that, but some fun teams to play with for sure. Got Jim Rice, 41 home runs. We're using him 77 to 79. So anyway, but I make these available. So appreciate everybody that showed up here and keep gaming. I'm gonna now see if I can get some of these photo files. I'm using MediaFire, so these photo files can be really big. So now I at least have a place where I can store them up there and then provide a link to download. And I may start doing that as a place to, once I get the good zip folders for these leagues. That way I can make sure I'm keeping the current ones there and providing links to the community and that. So I'm going to add that to my description here just for this video here in the next day or two. I'll get some hot links in there so any of you are interested can try these out. Let's see. Take a look at what I've got here. Cool. So I've got what I've got here. Cool. Yeah, I've got a few that I'll be able to work on. Cool. Yeah, I've got a few that I'll be able to work on. Awesome. So you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'm going to start doing more of these, I guess. I think the next thing Beatles has kind of challenged me is like, am I going to grab some of these files or whatever and maybe do a league? It got me thinking too, even with like the 60s file or the 70s file, throwing all of those players in a free agent pool and then maybe eliminating a duplicate, right? Because I think there in a few occasions in the 70s, for example, somebody, well, a good example is Reggie Jackson. He's going to be on that 70s file twice. He's going to be on here for, let's take a look at Oakland. Reggie will be on Oakland using 73, 74, and 75. And Reggie's going to be on the New York file as they closed out the decade using 78 to, or using 78, 79, and 80. And if I released everybody, I know some people are like, well, we don't want 2 iterations of the same player, but I would just pick which 3-year slice we want to go with, what the Oakland one or the New York one, right? And then get rid of the duplicate. But this could be another fun way to release all of these players from the 70s. And then you've basically got a 70s pool of players based on their best 3 straight year slice. That would be a fun little draft league to do. So in my next video, I may cover how would you go about taking a file like this, creating a new blank league, importing the players, getting rid of some duplicates, and then running like let's say we have a 12 team, 10 or 12 team league, how we would draft from just that pool. So I think I may tackle that as my next video, and then we can highlight again some of the draft tools in the game and walk through, how you're setting up a league and getting rid of duplicates, and some of that stuff may be helpful. And along the way, I find out sometimes there's some tips in there that people can pick up on, right? Even stuff that you thought you knew, there's new little features, and I find this all the time with the game. Some of the cool things that you can do in the roster. I know Beatles. I think it was yesterday or the day before was even showing down here, like when we get to a roster screen, and start looking at modifying a player. Right click on them. You can pull up their player card and start seeing all the good stuff about them, right? But then there's also in the game, as you start looking at your manager here, if I'm in the Yankees, I'm going to look at the manager preference here. I can start setting up specific um, things I want to just manage this team. The other thing I can do is I can go over here and take a specific player like Thurman Munson, um, and I can go to a usage tab. So this is where, to me, the game's really great. I can monitor his usage here, okay, and track what he's doing, but I've also got a manager tab right here. So not only do I have a manager tab for the team, but I have a manager tab for specifically how I want to manage Thurman Munson. So you can, so a lot of times you'll hear people, well, in my replay, the computer didn't play him the way I would want, or they didn't get all their at bats or whatever. Well, this is how you can fix it. But again, with a game that gives you this many options, then you're almost like overwhelmed, right? It's like, oh gosh, you mean I can manage him? Yeah, but you're going to have to go in and tell the manager exactly how you want him to behave. And there's so many things you can do here, right? Which is limiting, you've got some players on your team that you might want to pull for that defensive sub, and there's people you'd never pull. And this is one of those guys, right? So you can run a computer manager to kind of give you some default ratings here that'll help, but this is where you could come in and really tweak it. And if you wanted, before you generate computer lineups, you could come in here and say, look, this is a guy that needs to bat fourth, right? This is where he should be. And then you could drop this in here and then run your computer default manager for lineups, and then the computer would go ahead and show a little bit of respect to what you selected, maybe put him in as a third or fourth hitter or whatever. You can also tweak his availability. For my league, I just made everybody available. We're not using any transaction dates or anything there. But you can see here a lot more uh, options for pitchers in here. But game's very flexible, and a lot of times when people say they're not performing the way they need to be, you can dig into this. So what I may do is kind of like what Beatles was touching on, is set up a league. And then my next video will be, hey, how do we create, maybe I'll take this 70s file, create a draft league from it, and just start running through there, and we can do some Q&A and get some tips along the way. So in the next week, I'll see if I can get some time to put that together. So appreciate everybody that was here today, and leave comments below. I'm going to start getting those files, like I've said, loaded up in the description of this video, so that when you come back to this video, you could see those and have a way to quickly grab them. And look forward to some future sessions here where I can share stuff. And Tape Saturator, glad you came in today. Thanks. Arnold was here. Arnold's been enjoying the files. I know Arnold's sent me some messages, and I was able to kind of point him in the right direction on stuff. Random Human, I think, has been asking for some of the snippet tool and stuff demo, so hopefully this helped. Dog Days Dice is here. Appreciate the comment on the photo packs. I enjoy doing them, but it slows down other things I could be doing. So I'm glad I enjoy it. Smelly Wrestling Geek was here as well. So appreciate everybody stopping in, and look forward to seeing everybody on the next video. Thanks.